we'd like to start out by taking a quick look back on the show. And this is a story that, it's not the most politically significant story out there, but it's a story that sure is a head-scratcher, I'll tell you that much. And everybody that's talked to me about this story, including the two of you before the show, both said, this is so interesting. And isn't it interesting? I mean, I just feel like we have not gotten the real story here. And that's a look back at what happened to Bob Saget. Now, most of us remember Bob Saget, or some of us remember Bob Saget from Full House, right, back in the day. And, of course, he was a comedian, America's Funniest Home Videos. He was the host of that for a number of years. And anyway, he's done a lot of comedy in his life. I think his bread and butter throughout his life has been stand-up comedian. Well, as you know, he did a show in Jacksonville, actually Ponte Vedra Beach, which is like south of Jacksonville. And then drove to Orlando from there. It's about a 2-hour drive, they tell us. And drove to Orlando, wound up spending the night at the Ritz-Carlton in Orlando. And then he was found dead in his hotel room. And originally, we did not get a lot of details about it, except for, it looked like maybe he'd had a heart attack or a stroke or something because he was lying peacefully on his bed. He had his arm crossed across his chest, which they were telling us is the sign of a heart attack. And so now they've done his autopsy, and boy, have some interesting things been found in his autopsy. If you haven't heard about this, you're going to be shocked. Basically, what occurred is there was some kind of extremely violent head trauma to Bob Saget. And what's so interesting about this is that there was head trauma to the back of his skull, the right side of his skull, and the front of his skull in the occipital bone right above the eye. These are some of the hardest parts of the skull, actually, is the brow ridge right above the eye. That was apparently shattered. The back of his skull was shattered, and somehow he wound up lying on his bed looking somewhat peaceful. The doctors that have looked at this have said this is the kind of injury that you would suffer if somebody hit you in the head with a baseball bat, or if you fell from 20 or 30 feet. Okay, so This is not like a little slip and fall. Now, that's what the family's saying. Gosh, I almost feel weird, but the family just this past week came out and said that the authorities have determined that he hit his head, thought nothing of it, and went to sleep, almost like he slipped in the shower, hit his head on the back of the tub or something. Now, this is a Ritz-Carlton. I highly doubt they've got a shower tub in the Ritz-Carlton. I don't know, but most of those places have nice walk-in showers.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure they do.
Yeah, it's not a tub
there's a tub and then there's a shower.
There's a tub and I haven't been to a Ritz-Carlton. I know you probably have, Roxanne.
I've been to that Ritz-Carlton.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a tub and then there's a nice shower.
Yeah, so if you fall and hit your head in the shower, well, anyway, point is they don't think that would create a significant enough impact, really, to create these kind of injuries. Also, these types of injuries are not the type of injuries where you fall and you hit your head and you just kind of crawl off the bed and think, well, I guess I'll just sleep it off. These are the types of injuries where you're in severe pain from these types of injuries. And you probably, at least initially, before you start to black out, if you don't black out right off the bat, are aware, hey, I'm very seriously injured here. So, the question is, what happened to Bob Saget that night?
Check the cameras.
Well, you got to check the cameras. Pat, you debuted a couple of suppositions and stories about what could have happened. It's like, well, if there was somebody who went into the room and hit him in the head, that's going to be on camera. If he was hit in the head outside of the room, he never makes it to the room. Not with those kind of head injuries.
No.
Remember, he drove 2 hours down from Ponte Vedra to there, so it obviously didn't happen at or after the show. It had to have happened in the room.
You know what else is perplexing to me about that is the initial reports when it was like, okay, they came in, they found him, was that he had a heart attack. How can the initial reports even come out like that when there's that obvious sort of trauma that took place?
Well, and wouldn't you think if somebody had that kind of broken bone? Isn't there some bruising on the face? Didn't the skin get broken? If somebody gets cracked that hard in the head with a baseball bat, aren't they bleeding profusely all over the place? Don't you find him in a pool of blood in the bed? Where's the blood?
And wouldn't you find maybe something like he tried to put some compression or something cold, something that was around his head?
Instead, they said they found him laying peacefully, almost like there was nothing wrong with him in his bed with his arm crossed across. It just makes you wonder what in the world happened to Bob Saget. And like so many things in our world, I don't think we've gotten the full story here. There's definitely got to be more to this story. I mean, it's okay. I could foresee him hurting himself, falling in a shower or in a tub or something like that. I just don't foresee it resulting in this series of pieces of evidence, with the really severe trauma, the no blood everywhere, the no call for help. You're just going to go to bed. You're not going to immediately call downstairs, I've had a terrible fall. I'd call 911.
Or maybe call one of your relatives and say, oh man, I just hit my head. I'm feeling crappy, and get their input on what you should do.
Yeah. Well, we've heard of those stories where people have fallen in a shower or tub and hit their head, and then they've called a relative and said, hey, I just had a fall. I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling tired. I'm going to lay down. And some of those people have been found dead later. So, I mean, we've heard of that kind of thing happening. Anyway, I wonder what's going to come of this ultimately, what this investigation is going to lead to. It surely sounds like the family is willing to just accept the explanation that, he had a bad fall, thought he could just sleep it off and went to bed, which, I mean, in and of itself, if this was my family member who died like this, I mean, I'd be clamoring for an investigation, wouldn't you? What about the hotel not wanting to have a blemish? Well, that too, right? I mean, I just would like to know what happened to Bob Saget that night. Why did he wind up like this? Well, we'll see if we ever find out. Like so many things, I was thinking about the Las Vegas shooting. I mean, like so many things in our world, we just never, the bombing in Nashville, we just never get a story out of it. We never get an explanation, and our incurious media just drops it. It continues to beat the Ukraine war drums because that's what they are. They're paid propaganda. They're not actually investigative media. They're paid propaganda, and nobody's paying them to look into this, or heck, maybe even people are paying them not to look into this. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.